Hello, my name is Ian Weaver. I'm an associate professor in the art department here at St. Mary's College, as well as the gallery director for the Moreau Gallery. I want to welcome everyone to our Spring 2025 lecture for the exhibition titled Collective Impressions, a group show of works by members of the Indiana Women's Caucus for Art. The exhibition is on view in the Moreau Gallery located on the main level of Moreau Hall, so just across the quad, through February 28th. After our lecture today, there will be a small reception in the gallery from 4:30 to 6. Our format for today's lecture is a group presentation followed by a brief panel discussion and Q&A. Artist Helen Giglio will give a brief history of the organization, followed by introductions to the artists speaking today. Before we begin, I'd like to read the college's land acknowledgement statement before turning things over to Helen. We wish to acknowledge and honor the Native people and their traditional homelands on which we stand. We particularly recognize the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi and the Miami, who have been utilizing this land and its resources for many years and continue to do so today. With deep gratitude, we acknowledge the Native people and their culture within our community, as well as acknowledging the land upon which we gather, pray, learn, and work. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Helen.
Hi, my name is Helen Giglio, and I've been a member of the Women's Caucus for Art for over 4 decades. And I'd like to introduce you a little bit to our group and talk a little bit about where we're coming from and why we were created and how that all happened. But first I'd like to thank St. Mary's College, the art department, and Professor Weaver for providing this opportunity to exhibit in the beautiful Moreau galleries. And also for the welcome and assistance that has been provided. Many thanks to everyone that was involved. In 1978, a small group of local women artists met together to form a chapter of the Women's Caucus for Art. They were led by Moira Jeffrin, a professor of art at the University of Notre Dame, who described the IWCA as becoming an energizing, networking, nurturing, and high-energy group, promoting regional women artists on a level that had not existed before. 47 years later, the IWCA is still providing opportunities and support to women in art. 2 of our current members were part of that initial group, as was Carol Ann Carter, who was a professor of art here at St. Mary's College. And several others have been active for over 4 decades. We currently have over 40 members in the Indiana chapter, some from Lower Michigan and some from Eastern Illinois. And the Women's Caucus for Art, our national organization, the Women's Caucus for Art, was founded in 1972 in connection with the College Art Association. The WCA is a national member organization unique in its multidisciplinary, multicultural membership of artists, art historians, students, educators, and museum professionals. The mission of the Women's Caucus for Art is to create community through art, education, and social activism. WCA is committed to recognizing the contribution of women in the arts, providing women with leadership opportunities and professional development, expanding networking and exhibition opportunities for women, supporting local, national, and global art activism, and advocating for equity in the arts for all. The Indiana Women's Caucus for Art is a local chapter of the WCA, founded in South Bend, Indiana in 1978, with the mission of creating and expanding opportunities and recognition for women in art. The IWCA provides ongoing support for members, including exhibitions, workshops, conferences, professional projects, and activities. IWCA meets monthly, holding critiques and mini retrospectives, attending lectures, art exhibits, and openings. We share a common interest in artwork by women, often with challenging themes or activist perspectives. You can find out more about the national organization on the National Women's Caucus for Art website, as well as the Indiana chapter, who has a website at Indiana Women's Caucus for Art. So let me introduce the artists that will be on our panel today. First, we have Berkeley Oseguera Hustebao. She is a disciplinary artist living in Mishawaka, Indiana on Potawatomi and Miami land. Born and raised in the greater Los Angeles area of California, she apprenticed at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles, for 2 years and studied psychology and photography at Santa Monica College in California. In 2015, she went on to receive her BFA in craft with a concentration of drawing and painting at the Oregon College of Art and Craft in Portland, where she also studied printmaking and fiber art. She has shown work in group and solo exhibitions along the West Coast and throughout Indiana, notably here in the Hammes Gallery in 2021 and the then Notre Dame Center for Arts and Culture in 2018. Berkeley is also the current vice president of the IWCA. Teresa Greve-Wolf is a Chilean-American painter whose works reflect her cultural heritage and personal journey. Teresa studied at the Escuela de Bellas Artes in Chile before moving to the United States, where she continued her education at the University of Notre Dame and Indiana University, South Bend. In addition to her personal artistic pursuits, she taught private art lessons to students who went on to pursue degrees at institutions such as Parsons, RISD, and the Art Institute of Chicago. Her recent exhibitions include prominent venues such as the University of Notre Dame, St. Mary's Art College Moreau Gallery, Civil Rights Heritage Center, University of Illinois, South Bend Museum of Art, Colfax Art Center, Woman Made Gallery, Stola Contemporary Art Gallery, and Bridgeport Art Center in Chicago, BWCA in Brooklyn, Art of Fort Worth Gallery in Fort Worth, Museo de las Americas in Denver, Colorado, and the Art Show International in Los Angeles, California. Carrie Stieglitz-Black. Her artist statement reflects her deep connection to the natural world and fascination with the mysteries of the cosmos. Combining a love of science, particularly astrophysics, with her art, she creates a dialogue between humanity and the universe. Her work emphasizes the need to care for our fragile planet and one another, urging us to transcend selfish interests. The major aim of her work is to reimagine scientific discoveries in a way that is engaging and accessible. Through her paintings and writings, she inspires reflection on humanity's place in the cosmos and our responsibility as stewards of this precious little blue planet. So I'd like to turn it over to our first speaker, who is Berkeley.
Where's the keyboard? Okay. Hello, everyone. I'll just start by saying thank you, Ian, again, for your stewardship of the gallery spaces. We're really proud to have our work there. And thank you, Helen, for that introduction. I'm going to begin with 3 of the most influential artists on my creative process. Louise Bourgeois first, then Agnes Martin, and Hilma af Klint. I first encountered Louise Bourgeois' work in 2008 at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Grand Avenue, in a self-titled retrospective. In viewing her work, I experienced for the first time being viscerally affected by art. Bourgeois not only inspires me with her breadth of material, but also with her raw and simply gestured approach to expressing deep emotions. In college, I was introduced to Agnes Martin through her book Writings, an out-of-print and highly coveted book at our school library. Her writings focused on observing hyper details of the mundane and gave a sense of sublime in those details. I was intrigued by what she observed and how she chose to organize it in her work in orderly and simple patterns. Martin also suffered from schizophrenia, and I find her contained and structured approach to creatively navigating a presumably difficult experience to be like night and day to Louise Bourgeois' sometimes loud and somewhat messy approach to emotions and trauma. My last influence is Hilma af Klint, who is known as the pioneer of abstraction today. Af Klint was a highly skilled, trained artist who rendered realistic drawings for pay, but she had a strong interest in theosophy and spiritism. She participated in seances with other female creatives, and through this developed a relationship with spiritual guides. These guides instructed her to produce hundreds of paintings with the goal of expressing occult understandings of existence. Not only am I inspired by the aesthetics of her abstract work, but also by the means to which they were created. I myself have experienced spiritual phenomena and often either intentionally embed it or find it within my creative work. Before I discuss the pieces in this exhibition, I'll show work in progress and some play that I've been up to in my studio recently. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's where I'm at. Okay. Sorry about that. For some context, in 2018, I began using braids as subject matter, inspired by a story from my great-grandmother, Marilia Salas Chavira. A story from my great-grandmother, Marilia Salas Chavira, of her braids as a young girl growing up on the border of Mexico and Texas, and also by Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. In this inspiration, braids have developed a multitude of meaning for me. Primarily, they act as keepers of understanding. They are my attempt at organizing aspects of my life, ancestral, physical, emotional, and beyond. To bring in the words of Kimmerer, I'll share this quick excerpt from the preface of Braiding Sweetgrass. A sheaf of sweetgrass, bound at the end and divided into thirds, is ready to braid. In braiding sweetgrass, so that it is smooth, glossy, and worthy of the gift, a certain amount of tension is needed. As any little girl with tight braids will tell you, you have to pull a bit. Of course, you can do it by yourself, by tying one end to a chair or by holding it in your teeth and braiding backward away from yourself. But the sweetest way is to have someone else hold the end so that you pull gently against each other. All the while leaning in, head to head, chatting and laughing, watching each other's hands, one holding steady, while the other shifts the slim bundles over one another, each in its turn. Linked by sweetgrass, there is a reciprocity between you. Linked by sweetgrass, the holder is as vital as the braider. The braid becomes finer and thinner as you near the end, until you're braiding individual blades of grass, and then you tie it off. Will you hold the end of the bundle while I braid? Hands joined by grass, can we bend our heads together and make a braid to honor the earth? And then I'll hold it for you while you braid too. So a little over a year ago, I moved into a studio space in downtown South Bend. To get my foot in the door of the building, I rented the available unit with no windows, heat, or cooling, and only one harsh fluorescent light. To ease myself into the rhythm of working in this new studio, I gave myself the task of drawing at least one braid, regardless of what else I accomplished in the space that day. Without sketching, I used a felt pen on tracing paper and allowed each braid to wind into its unique shape. Previously, I had laid out the path of the braid in my drawings, and this new task was relieving because it didn't require thinking ahead to an end goal and allowed for creative meandering and stream of consciousness thinking. The braid was guiding me. Flash forward to June of last year, and I now have a studio space with 3 east-facing windows and a little more square footage. I brought in my plants, I could hear what was happening on the streets, and I was able to see the light change throughout the day. Though I attempted other creative methods, I found myself wanting to continue with the braid drawings, but I wanted to elevate their materials. I set new rules: 9 by 12-inch black paper, graphite braids, and white colored pencil circles, and gave myself an end goal of making 108 braids to represent a mala, or prayer beads used traditionally for mantra counting and meditation. The image here shows 30 drawings from last September. I'm currently on braid 103. Instead of leaving this drawing task for the end of my day in the studio, it became my studio opener. With this steady producing of work, newer ideas began to flow. At the end of last year, the IWCA participated in a golden acrylics workshop where we surveyed different products from the company. All of the materials we got to play with, I was most excited about the coarse molding paste and began using it in the studio. These two paintings here are acrylic on paper, on 9 by 12-inch paper, again. Right now I don't know what direction these paintings will take me, but it's a lot of fun noticing what colors I gravitate towards and what shape relationships I'm starting to encounter. Specifically without calling in the braid motif. With drawing and printmaking, there is a slickness that is very satisfying, though sometimes I find it hindering to me. I'm curious to continue playing with this acrylic material and its possibilities for layering and texturing. Okay, now quickly to the works in this show. I decided to use our exhibition Collective Impressions as a chance to share my first creative works that I have produced in direct relation to a life-changing trip I took to the Amazon rainforest last year. In mid-September, I had the fortune to study Spiritism with two incredible teachers, Isabel Barcé and one of the 13 grandmothers, Claudia Yuda, in their home village in the Purus National Forest in Amazonas, Brazil. While I don't have enough time to really go into who the 13 grandmothers are and what they're about, I will say briefly that they're a collective of international elder women whose life works are earth-based practices devoted to peace and health of the planet. So this visit was only 2 weeks long, but packed with experiences, and it's been an unfolding process to even attempt to understand aspects of it, let alone try to create work from it. So if you notice that these pieces in this show seem to just scratch the surface, and also this talk to just scratch the surface of my experience, that's because they are. So with that, this first piece is titled Madrinha, which translates to godmother from Portuguese. It is a relief print in honor of the village folklore that when a blue morpho butterfly passes you in the forest, you are being blessed by the village matriarch, Madrinha Rita. This was a sweet occurrence that would bring sighs of tranquility to all of us throughout the days. My arrival to the village occurred on a full moon, and this piques hearts to the illumination of the forest in the night by her glow. This next piece, Aguas de Mapia, or Waters of Mapia, is a serograph, or a screen print, portraying my experience bathing in the river that ran through the village. Believed to be healing waters, it was almost necessary that you bathe multiple times a day to keep the bugs at bay and to fend off the heat. Together, we would honor the river with songs, and it was common to find an individual meditating or resting at the edge. Here I've made the sun a bright orange in reference to the smoke that clouded the sun from the raging forest fires that were actively burning nearby. You'll notice in this photo that the waters are low. During my time there, the Amazon and its peoples were experiencing the most intense drought in history. In the village, we prayed to the waters for rain. And this last piece is titled Self-Guided. This is another serograph, and this is a first attempt at expressing a visually intense moment that I experienced when I met someone from a shared past life. So the two solid brushstrokes are pulled towards each other by an energy between them. The braid here acts as an eternal link between myself and my gray, intangible past self. Though I'm not ashamed to reveal that I've experienced this, it is a very esoteric idea and feeling, and I understand it could be difficult to accept as even a possibility. It's been tricky to portray such an ineffable discovery, but making art that is specific and personal is a vulnerable act that I admire in other creators. So I'll continue to make and allow what comes up to come up. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carrie Stiglitz-Black. These are, all the pieces you'll see are from my master's exhibition and my thesis entitled Enlightenment at the Speed of Light. Clear at the bottom of the painting is a mountain range with a setting sun. This is a detail. I and potentially you are standing on one of those plateaus, a mere speck. One very clear night about 15 years ago, I and my family were walking at Crater Lake, one of the few places left where you can find a truly dark sky. We were stopped in our tracks by the sight of a dazzlingly bright and vivid Milky Way. I had never seen anything like it before or since, even though I've gone searching to recapture that experience even back to Crater Lake. When you look into the sky at night, all of the stars you can see with the naked eye are within our Milky Way galaxy. The Earth is located in one of the outer spiral arms, about 26,000 light years from the galaxy's center. How far is 26,000 light years? Well, our sun is 91.5 million miles from Earth, and it takes the sunlight just 8 minutes to reach us. Light travels at 186,282 miles per second. 1 light year is about 6 trillion miles, a number too big to make any sense to us. 26,000 light years just to the center of our galaxy from where Earth is located. Not to get all the way across, just to get to the center. The closest neighboring galaxy to us is Andromeda, and it is 2.5 million light years away. And our galaxy is one of hundreds of billions of other galaxies in the known universe. The point of this painting, standing on the edge of a crater in the mountains in the dark, I couldn't see anything. You can sense there are people near you, but you can't see what color they are, how old they are, or what religion they practice. And in the galactic grand scheme of things, how can it possibly matter? Zenith. It's the highest point on an arc that a celestial body follows, like the arc of the sun traveling across the sky. High noon would be its zenith. But depending on where you're standing on the Earth, high noon changes for you. It's also defined as the point in the sky directly above you. But where is that point exactly? Because space is infinite, that point can be ever higher and higher. Humans glorify and reward being the best, hitting the zenith of various fields. We have the Olympics, the Academy Awards, the Super Bowl, the Nobel Prize. We've benefited as a species by trying to break new ground, discover new things, leave the world better than we found it. We have superpowers competing to be number one. Healthy competition is, well, healthy. But it so often turns lethal, as it has for millennia. If a candidate ran for president on the promise of helping the world coordinate and organize for the just distribution of resources and the sustainability of the entire planet, would they be anything other than dismissed? Maybe that day will come. This is War of the Worlds. Are you familiar with the SETI Institute? The letters stand for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. SETI is a privately but well-funded research organization whose purpose is to search for life outside of the Earth. So far, there have been suggestions of possible microbial life on the surface of Mars, but no solid evidence as of yet. Huge SETI radio receivers listen constantly for any sign of intelligent signals, but only once was one tantalizing signal picked up in 1977 that was never heard again. In 2019, a possible signal turned out to be a human-made radio transmission, but none of this stops the constant search. Many others think the search might not be a wise one. We should only want to make acquaintance with an alien intelligence if we assume they will be peaceful and helpful. But I ask you to think about the state of the world today. How many wars and conflicts rage around the globe? Neighbors, families, churches, political parties, let alone countries, cannot get along. But changing our minds about contacting any possible alien intelligence is no longer an option. All of our radio and TV broadcasts, as well as mobile phone and satellite communications, all continue to travel out into space. If there is someone else out there, we will eventually be found. Let's see, I think this might be out of order. Okay, that's all right. This is ovulation of stars according to the phases of the moon. This was a huge still life I set up in my studio, drawn from life, no tracing or projection. It's a little comic relief. In 1609, Galileo devised a telescope with about 20 power, not much more than common binoculars. But it was the first time humanity could look up into the heavens and see the craters on the moon and the 4 biggest moons around Jupiter. This piece is called Quantum Entanglement and Us. I wrote poems for all of the pieces in my exhibition, trying to more eloquently tie together the science and the human aspect. This one I'm going to defer to the poem because it's complicated. I don't have time to read it now, but if we have time to come back to it later, I will, if requested. This is part of the diptych entitled Tethered. This painting is called Earth and Placenta. Thinking of our Earth as quite literally our Mother Earth, we see the umbilical cord reaching into space. This is the other half of the diptych, babies and astronauts. We can follow the umbilical cord into space and its connection to the fetuses and the astronauts, making the point that no matter where humans go into space, whether it's the space station, the moon, or beyond, we are tethered to the Earth and rely on it for resources. Nebula are star nurseries. They are huge clouds of gas and dust that coalesce under the pressure of their own gravity as their mass increases. When the pressure becomes great enough, fusion occurs and stars are literally born and burst forth as nuclear furnaces. I thought it was a strange coincidence that these star nurseries glow hot pink and baby blue. The pink color is glowing hydrogen, the fuel of stars and the most common element in the universe. Nuclear fusion within the star transforms hydrogen into helium, element number 2 on the periodic table, and the cloud glows blue from the fusion in stars producing helium from hydrogen. You are probably hearing a lot of hoopla about Mars. Terraforming it, which literally means to make it like Earth, is very far off. In order to not be tethered to the Earth and reliant on it for supplies, Mars has to be able to supply people with whatever they need. Mars is the most hospitable option we have, but it's actually quite inhospitable. The average temperature is minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere is 90% carbon dioxide and only 1% oxygen. The gravity is about 1/3 of Earth's. Our hearts, lungs, and even the small vessels in our eyes depend on the gravity of Earth to function properly. Muscles atrophy, blood fluids, body fluids aren't able to circulate properly, and even the fluids in our ears that keep us balanced need gravity to function properly. The problems that need to be figured out are very big. When Earth and Mars are lined up at their closest, it would take 9 months with our current technology to get to Mars. Huge amounts of fuel. So this cold, barren place that isn't very inviting to begin with, and how many people do you think can be shuttled and relocated there? The whole Earth isn't going to get towed into space and everyone given a box lunch once they reach Mars and told to make themselves comfortable. Only a handful will go. The rest of us are going to get left behind. This is all about relocating some humans to enable the species to survive. It is not about you or your family surviving. The only hope for the rest of us is to keep the Earth survivable. Perspective. We come back around to that word perspective, the name of this painting. How do we put it all in perspective? The Earth is a tiny speck within our solar system. Our entire solar system is but a grain of sand within our Milky Way galaxy. Our sun being just one of hundreds of billions of other stars within our own Milky Way galaxy. Many of those suns hundreds of times bigger than our sun. And our galaxy is just one of hundreds of billions of other galaxies in the cosmos. Our Earth is a mere speck, infinitesimally small, but not insignificant. The only place known to harbor life, not just microbial life, but amazing life forms thriving on an oxygen-rich water world. It's all we've got. We'd better take care of it. This is the view of, or oops, that's a detail, sorry, showing our little Earth there. This is a view of the Earth from the Voyager space probe in 1977 on its way to Neptune, when it turned its camera back toward Earth from 3.7 billion miles away while traveling at 40,000 miles per hour. This was at the urging of Carl Sagan, who dubbed it the pale blue dot, and who hoped this view of Earth would inspire people to value our precious little blue gem and work to protect it.
Hi, my name is Teresa Greve Wolf. And first I want to thank Ian and the Caucus group for letting me show my work. Over the course of my career, my work has evolved significantly. With time, I discovered passion for painting social justice issues and creating art that inspired action. Today, I am sharing selected work that mark a big turning point in my journey as an artist. Born, married, and having my first child, I left Chile with my husband when he began his PhD during Berkeley studies. During that time, Pinochet came into power and people disappeared, were in prison, or fled the country. Because of that, I painted Revolution, that I entered in a social justice competition at the Goldfarb Art Center in 1986. That reflects the violence in Chile during Pinochet dictatorship. This piece sparked my interest in addressing social justice through art. Drawing inspiration from Picasso's Guernica, I used cubist figures to portray the innocent victim of this regime. My next piece, Suppress, shows the devastating impact of the Iran and Iraq war. The painting shows a man holding a woman who has just lost her life, surrounded by protesting citizens. It captures grief, loss, and sadness left after the war. This piece marked a turning point as I began using my art to process and reflect on events around me. In 2005, a trip to London inspired my painting, Surrounded. Overwhelmed by the pollution, homelessness, and indifference in the subway, I created a piece that expressed my reaction to the way society normalizes hardship. By 2020, my approach to painting expanded, both in scale and in impact. I Cannot Breathe is composed of 4 canvases and was created in response to George Floyd's murder. The anger and grief I felt translate into a powerful visual statement on the abuse of power. Unity was the first painting that marked the beginning of my journey exploring women's rights. In this piece, I celebrate the strength and resilience of women. This large-scale painting features 4 women on different races connected in a unity knot, their hands clasped together to symbolize unity and equality. In 2022, I began incorporating mixed media into my work. Treating beauty is a call to action on climate change. The painting showed a beautiful mountain scene showed about the water. Contrast with the polluted reflection below, where trash, dead fish, and chemical waste all overwhelmed the image. Real trash and plastic bags were added to emphasize the hard reality behind the impression natural beauty. The following year, I introduced mirrors and reflective material into my art. Stop increased gun violence, using mirrors for the eyes and reflective elements throughout to make viewers see themselves between the story. This technique invites them to engage with the base on the personal level. One of my largest work, Glorious Spirit of Ukraine, we will lay our soul and body for cherished freedom, is composed of 5 canvases and portrays the horror of the war in Ukraine. Each canvas captures a different aspect of the conflict, from soldiers fighting for freedom to the displacement and suffering of civilians. The large red hand from the word "stop" serves as a centerpiece, symbolizing the urgent need to end the violence. Reflective material are used to involve the viewers in the narrative. By the end of 2024, during the ongoing global challenge, I felt inspired to create a piece of hope and resilience. Resilience in bloom represents this. The painting centered on a group of immigrants looking at the radiant lotus flower, symbolizing growth and transformation. Behind them, a phoenix expressed his wing, representing rebirth and the enduring human spirit to overcome adversity. Adding these symbols offer a message of hope in time of darkness. This collection not only showcases my evolution as an artist, but also reflects my commitment to addressing the pressing issues of our time. Through my art, I hope to leave you with this question: what change will you reflect? Thank you very much.
Since there's time, I'm going to read the poem that goes with this piece, which is Quantum Entanglement in Us. Cough drop in my mouth, sorry. Quantum entanglement is a relationship between quantum particles. What is a quantum particle? Firstly, let's define quantum. It's the smallest discrete unit of a phenomenon. For example, the smallest unit of light is a photon. The smallest electrical unit is an electron. I wonder what the smallest human unit would be. A human fertilized egg remains a single cell for the first 12 hours of its life. It may take as long as 30 hours before that single cell becomes 2. Apparently hard at work because another 15 hours will pass before those 2 cells become 4, and a full 3 days before those 4 cells become 16. Suddenly I have a new appreciation of just what must be taking place. Back to quantum entanglement. So far we know it involves very small units or particles. What is the entangled part of it? Well, to be entangled is to be involved in a way that is very difficult to become separated from. The classic example in quantum physics is to take a single photon and split it into two particles. Those two particles can be separated and be sent very far from each other over vast distances, and yet their properties remain inexorably linked to one another. Almost, but we'll get to that. Many, many particles can be entangled all at the same time and behave as if they were one. Now, no matter where those two entangled particles travel to across the universe, they remain entangled, so that if one of them is observed to have a given property, the other particle will have either an identical property or the exact opposite, depending on how the experiment is set up. But knowing this, measuring one particle lets the observer predict with absolute certainty what property the other particle will display. Two caveats. First, as soon as a particle is observed, it reverts back to a state of all possible states until it is measured again from a different perspective. Then whatever state this particle is observed in, its entangled pair will be in exact correspondence. Doesn't matter which particle is observed first or how far apart the particles are. The other particle will be in exact correspondence to the first. How does this seemingly magic happen? Scientists don't know how it happens, but they do know how it doesn't happen. There is no communication between the two particles, and there is no hidden information embedded when the two particles were created. The two particles just continue to behave as one, no matter how far apart they are from one another. There is a shoe waiting to drop. Remember I said there were two caveats. Well, the second is this. The particles are entangled, intertwined, linked, and meshed until another particle, any other particle that just happens to be passing by, comes within proximity. And then the spell is broken, the magic is dashed, the bond is undone, and the two particles behave as if they had never known one another. How is our human cell coming along? Two other cells, one a sperm and one an egg, came together and became as one, a zygote, a new single cell. One single cell that came from two other single cells. Those two cells becoming inexorably linked, intertwined, enmeshed, entangled. Then 4, then 16, then 32, then 64, until 100,000 billion cells. Which is to say, 100 trillion cells are formed that comprise the human body. Can you comprehend 100 trillion? I can't either. Let's just enjoy the awe. 100 trillion entangled cells that all sprang from one, or rather one sperm cell and one egg cell that became a single cell, a zygote. But wait, there's more. 100 trillion cells in my body and 100 trillion cells in your body and everyone else's that ever lived. And not only did the cells in my body come from a single zygote, as did yours and everyone else's, but we all, every one of us alive now or ever alive on this earth, came originally from the same mother and father somewhere in the warm embrace of southern Africa. We should all be entangled, acting as one, caring about each individual cell as if it were part of our own bodies, like a single organism from a single zygote. But we don't. We already learned how that happens. Something else just needs to come within our proximity. Greed, ego, lust, only needs to get close, a quick flyby, and then it's as if I never knew you.
So we have time for questions. I've got a big mouth, but I'm going to still use the microphone, and I'll come around to you because we are recording it, so it'll pick it up. So, and I'll turn on the lights. I did have one question. So your works are so very different, but I'm wondering if, as you're seeing the work, and if you've seen it in the gallery, if you see any connections between yourselves or your work at all, thematically or visually. Ooh, that's right. Sorry.
That's okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I will speak to that. I got to help out with the install of that, so I saw a lot of the works pretty closely. I think that it's really interesting, not only some color palette things that we share aesthetically, but also the content. There is a lot of activism in the women's work. There's a lot of women that have things to say about the state of the world. And then there's also, like Teresa's last piece, a lot of hopeful, sensual images as well that create a space for breath, I want to say. Yeah, I think, is there anything else that's coming up for you guys?
No,
Yeah. And then all the things in between.
Yeah. Excuse me. I heard a scientist speak who actually was very famous, maybe in the 80s, who was talking about the future of the earth, the future of humanity, and encouraging everybody, whatever your talent, whatever your avocation is, to do your best, to be the best that you could be. We can't all be scientists. We can't all be making these groundbreaking discoveries that are going to save the planet. But he specifically even said, if you're an artist, be the best artist you can be. If you're a musician, be the best musician you can be. And we all work together toward that goal of helping ourselves survive with a hopeful and prosperous future.
Any questions at all? Yes.
I was interested in the 13 Grandmothers Berkeley. How did we get in touch with them? What kind of characters are they?
Well, at this point, a few of them have passed because they are of elderly women, so not all 13 are in the physical form. But if you look them up online and you find 13 Grandmothers, they're international, so they're from many, there are some indigenous women, mostly indigenous women, practicing their traditional ceremonies and things like that. And yeah, so yeah, look into the 13 Grandmothers. I don't think they're doing any specific, no, actually in October there was something in the United States, so it's just not as frequent as it used to be. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm interested in how each of you have benefited from being in a community of other women artists, and how that has either affected what you're making or how you're feeling, or how that's connected to your practice to be in this community.
Obviously, my art goal for people to be aware what's going on in the world right now. So that's what I'm trying to be, given my ideas to the public, not to create a war or anything, for the contrary, for make them understand and do it pacifically, help each other, and create equality for all of us, hopefully.
I would say just anytime you can be in a community of active, intelligent, caring people, it's inspiring, it's encouraging, kind of gives us the impetus to continue on. And maybe especially with women, the way women through time have always gathered together to discuss and encourage each other. I think it is just probably especially helpful for women to have that touch point with each other to express the things that are really important to us that sometimes get overshadowed by other things going on in the world, other louder voices, and it's just helpful always to have that body, that family, that sisterhood of encouragement to do your work and keep going.
Yeah, I'll emphasize that as well. I think there's been a lot of kind encouragement, but sometimes I think because I'm one of the younger members, I get, it's nurturing, but also there are times when people are like, you're done with that, move on to the next thing. And it's really nice to have a community that can reflect that to you, and also to kind of set examples of the many ways that you can be doing it. You could be doing a creative practice. I didn't have a space to fit it in, but there's this really good book called Women at Work by Mason Curry. And he had a book, I think it was called Artists at Work, and then he realized he didn't have enough women in it, so he made a whole book for women at work. And it's all short bios of different creative women, dancers, writers, filmmakers, and artists, and how their creative process happened in the studio, or like were they party animals and they like wrote for 10 hours at night or something like that. And that's something that I like to read like a snippet of every time I go to my studio to kind of give me perspective of like, what's my story, how is it unfolding, and how does it fit into the cosmos of all the women makers. And I think the IWCA also acts as that for me, because I see a lot of you here. And every time I hear one of your stories, it like helps me to understand how is mine unfolding in a different way.
Question. So I didn't know like structurally how it happens outside of the group having shows. So that kind of formal thing, you're a part of an organization and you show, or maybe there are like juried opportunities. But are there opportunities for you? And you were kind of just talking about this, so I'm assuming there are. But are there opportunities for you to have studio visits with one another? Is that built into the organization?
Yeah. Do you want to speak to that?
Have together once in a month or something, like we are going to go, for example, on Sunday to go and see a show of one of another artist. So each artist have the opportunity to show their own art and explain it to the show. And then you get the critics and you learn from that. So it's very important. I really like this organization. It's really good. And the most important thing that you said, we are women, so we help each other. And that is important. We have to be resilient.
Yeah, and also for anyone who like sticks around after school, or like when you graduate or something, there's a lot of opportunities that the community shares with each other. We have a Slack group that we use, we have our Instagram, and we have our web page, and we email, and we're constantly sharing opportunities with each other, and we also have a newsletter every month, so people send in their announcements, so we always have a stream of what's happening. And like Helen pointed out, we do mini retrospectives like this weekend coming up, and we do about, I want to say half of them are on Zoom, because we do stretch pretty far in our area, and then the other half are in person, and when you're a new member, we generally like to rope you in for that so that we can know what you're about when you come in, and then we know where to push you in directions of opportunities and things like that. So it's pretty tight knit. But also you could just like show your work in like come to Art Take, drop your artwork off, and like, there's some people I've never met because they're just like constantly working, and they also use our opportunities to show work, and then they have their other work showing too.
But we are also connected nationally because we are the WCA is also a national organization, so we are connected with them.
Yeah, and they have, there's like there's a lot of information, but they have like book clubs, and they have events happening in Chicago. They're based out of Chicago, so they're not far, and so we can, right? This national is based out of Chicago? No? New York? Well, I'm learning new things, but as vice president gets to learn things too. But anyways, I know that there's a lot of opportunities that happen in Chicago. There's like an annual thing that's a big deal. Anyways, yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was wondering about was you spoke to it about if the students who are here stay in town, and maybe that's obviously it's a membership that they might want to be a part of. Are there also professional development opportunities?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it's kind of like what the community is asking for, and so like Lori and I were just the other day when we were installing the show, we were like, we should have the opportunity for people to learn how to install shows. I know Kay, as a photographer, she's always offering people, like, I can help with photographing your work. Like, she's offered that to me. I know, not always, maybe not always, but she's like, all the time. It's been mentioned. There's, but it varies with what the community is asking for. But she'll speak to that.
Yeah, as far the professional development takes place often at the national level, so they'll run a meeting every month, and it might be how to use Instagram efficiently, how to help your website, and they have online Zoom things nationally, and they are pretty national. Like there's a woman that coordinates who lives in Massachusetts, and the current president, the national president, isn't based in DC, and it depends. There's people all over the place, and we have had conferences, and we honor national artists too. So I'm part of the Caucus, and we meet monthly too. So there's a lot of chances to develop with your own interests.
Yeah, there's also a young artist caucus as well, specifically, and like just another detail about this, because I know there was another question in the audience. I don't know if it's about the IWCA or not, but there's a fee for it. It's under $100, and that's for the whole year. And then there's shows that happen throughout the year through our caucus that don't necessarily cost money once you're a member. And so you're kind of guaranteed a couple shows a year, which is really great to, as a young artist, to show you're active and that you're continuing. And then there's because once you get out of school, you apply to shows, juried shows, and sometimes you're spending $30. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, and you might not even get in. And then if you get in, it's probably in another state, and then you got to send your stuff there. So it can get expensive. And so when you're with the IWCA, it seems like there's this upfront cost, but then it ends up working in your favor. I think I saw a question over there.
So I wrote it down because I kept forgetting. So do each of you do your art full time, and then have you always? And then if you are doing it full time, how long did it take you to get to that point where you were doing it full time? Hopefully that makes sense.
Well, I work every day in my work. I used to teach. I used to have students. But it came the time when I decide I have to do my own work, And so I do practice every day, and that's what they think is more important than anything, that you want to progress, and challenge yourself to change the style, because it's kind of boring to have or to do always the same thing. So try to always to improve, and don't be afraid. That's what I always tell my students. Don't be afraid to
I have to acknowledge that I do have, I guess it's somewhat, I have privilege, financial privilege, but also some of that is sacrifice as well, because my husband is Professor Hutz, and so he's got a full-time job here, and it's been really helpful. A lot of art professors don't get to work full-time, and so that itself is a privilege, and so we're able to work with that, and then at the same time we like navigate some other choices, you know, but because of that he is supporting me as an artist. And when I was in school, there was this artist that came, and I worked for her a little bit, and she was doing all this really cool stuff, and she was like fully immersed in it, and I was like, oh, this is like ideal. And then my teacher behind the scene was like, her husband is her patron, and like that's her privilege. And I was like, oh wow, that's not why I married you. That's not why I went there. But it's just that's how it unfolded for me. I don't spend every day in my studio because we also have dogs and cats, and we, you know, there's just other things in life that also interest me. And there's opportunities like this. Like, I'm not in my studio right now. But I do try to get there a certain amount of time every day, most days. I don't remember what else I was saying. But so there's that. So I want to acknowledge that privilege. Oh, but I also had a teacher who was like, and I've done this too. I've done off and on where it's like, I'm going to work at a bakery because that's not going to take me away creatively from my work. I don't have to take that work home. And it's fun, and then I can do my studio stuff. But then at a certain point, I'm like, I'm done working at a bakery, and I'm going to try to do my art. And so I'm still in that realm right now, and we'll see what comes. We'll see what comes next.
I think that's a really, really, really big, difficult question. I can remember as a student being very interested in art history and realizing that so many of the big famous names were men, and as you look into their private lives, they had often patrons that came from wealthy families. As adults, they had parents who were still giving them allowances. They had wives who might be a muse, but were also the people who took care of daily life. And that artist was free to be in their studio and doing their thing and becoming famous. And I think that does, I'm sure the world has changed a lot. You know, men have different perspective on their attitudes toward responsibility to their families, to the world in general, but in many ways it has been part of the history of being a woman is that you have a role as a nurturer. For many women, I mean, obviously that's not written in stone. It does make life a little more complicated, you know, when you have children, when you have and once your children are grown, then you have elderly parents and you have siblings with whatever issues. And I'm reading a book right now, many of you have probably read. I've had this book in my library for like forever. I think it was written in 2012 maybe, called Art in War. And the premise of the book is to how to get past all the obstacles and things that throw themselves up that we cling to as an excuse for resistance to not do our work. And there is definitely truth in that, but he goes on to say, you know, I'm divorced, you know, I do my work every single day, no matter what, nothing else gets in the way, and there's some nugget of truth in that, like in anything else, you know, that you have that dedication, that you are going to do your work, whatever that work happens to be. The reality is that life often gets in the way, and you have to make those choices. I will say that even if those things that get in the way that prevent you maybe from being in the studio or picking up that paintbrush or whatever it happens to be, you can continue to always be doing your work, in that you are always thinking, you are always, you're writing that paragraph, or you've got that idea, you get it in a notebook, if nothing else, that when you eventually can get back to it, you get back to it. And art can be a huge central full-time part of your life, even if every day you don't have the privilege or the opportunity of walking into a studio. It's just you continue to do your work, kind of like that famous scientist that I talked about from the 80s who said, if you're an artist, be the best artist you can be and make somehow that contribution, to the world. And that is our full-time job. That we can do every day, no matter what.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming out. Thank you for... And so we'll have the reception across the quad over in Moreau. So we'll see you over there. If you have more questions for the artists, and I'm sure more artists will be there, hopefully, you can ask as well. So thank you.